Reef DVM's coming at you with how we simply put in a deer or turkey food plot on the farm. It's a pretty simple thing for us to do on the farm, but it's very helpful for the animals throughout winter, and it certainly improves our hunting. I've got a video review that I'm doing on this tiller, and I'm going to release that at the same time, so I'm not going to talk, a ton about the tilling as far as the mechanics of how the machine works. But I certainly think that's the first process. Find yourself in the spring a good location, have your stand set up so you know your shooting lanes are ready, and then really try to decide what you're going to put in. In this situation, I'm putting this food plot in with my neighbor, and we're really looking for that archery season, and we're headed towards deer. So we're trying to put the food plot close enough to the stand to really bring him into it, to get him within that shooting distance. He's got several shooting lanes on his farm where a rifle would work just fine. But when it comes to bow hunting, that's not what we want. We want them to come out of the thick stuff, step into these areas, and give us that, target that we're looking for. So I'm not making these food plots real big. I'm trying to keep them under about 60, 70 feet. And probably no wider than 30 or 40 feet. Obviously, again, I give them enough room so there'll be enough vegetation that can support them for a while. But I don't want to get them too far out where we can't reach them. The first step for us is just like the housing industry: location, location, location. I like to get the stand up first, and then I like to work, the area around the stand, preferably kind of a thicker area, and in between two thicker areas if I could. So here we are, we've got a little bit of a clearing, and I'm not tilling up this whole area, but I'm going to put a couple swaths right through it, and I'm just going to till this kind of raw ground up. Typically in the summer, this ground is probably going to get to be 4 or 5 feet tall with weeds. So, tilling it is the best way to kind of get it under control. I think it'll work the best. You can see the house here. It's a raised platform house, but it does work well for archery too. I'm about as wide as I'm going to make this. I'm going to teardrop shape it. As you can see to the west side there is another farm and a barn over there. So obviously we're not going to really want to direct our shooting that way. So I'm going to teardrop it to the other side where there's more shooting lane. As far as how many times I till it, it really has got to do with the soil. This is a little bit more of a black dirt, clay, loam soil, so it's pretty hard. So I'm going to do it at least twice. I want enough fluff so that I can lay the seeds. And then when I drag it in, I get some compaction, so those seeds do activate in the moisture. When they do, that little bit of compacted soil helps break that seed coat off them. Now everybody decides what they want to put in. There's been years where I've put some corn in, years where I've put turnips in, I've done clover, I've done alfalfa. This year we're taking a little bit different approach. My neighbor really would like us to do soybeans. Soybeans is a good crop because it allows us to put corn back in this little strip next year. It really helps that. It's also a good crop because the deer like it during certain points of the season. It's not a late season crop. It's an earlier season crop, and the deer like it when it's still green, which helps us out, especially during the archery season, which in this state is running around that September time frame. By October, November, they're going to be more dried out. The beans are just going to get eaten by the deer, I get that. But at that point, we're not probably hunting them as much out of this stand. So this is the shape I ended up going with. I do like this shape. I think it'll work really well for shooting lane. And like I said, we're going to try and keep some of the other shooting lanes here mowed. But we're going to leave some of that tall stuff too, so they have a place to hide and feel comfortable. And then, hopefully step into this, pick up some of the food plot nutrition and go with it. One of my favorite items to actually plant in a food plot for winter is turnips. The deer just like rooting them up in the winter. But a lot of times it's a real late season crop and doesn't really attract them for bow season. So we'll see how this does. Take the gator. It's the diesel one. Hook up the little spreader to the back end and dump a bunch of soybeans in it, and off we go. These little spreaders are a little tough to see behind the gator. I kind of prefer to pull them with the lawnmower, but the lawnmower might sink in on this a little too much at the beginning, so we're going to spread the soybeans out with this. And I like to actually put them in pretty thick. I'm not worried about drilling them. I'm just kind of laying them down fairly heavy. Once we get them laid down pretty heavy, it's just a matter of dragging it in. I would say to till this probably took 20 minutes. Probably to seed it took about maybe 15, and probably, I don't know, half of a 40-pound bag of soybeans, because again, we planted it somewhat heavy. And then to drag it took about 15 minutes. So literally, folks, the actual labor part of this, probably done in seriously 2 hours. With kind of getting the seed, getting out the equipment, hooking up the drag, going out and tilling it, coming back in, washing the tiller, putting the drag away, and putting the little seeder away. So this is something that's quite doable. We're not going to be out here watering this or doing anything with it. We're just going to let Mother Nature take its course and give us what it can. But in the past, this has really worked well. And to that point too, a lot of times change up your food plots. If you put turnips in for a couple of years, try something different. If you've put a narrow swath, say 30 feet wide, say, 80 feet long of corn in, again, you do that 2-3 years, go and put beans in. It'll help replenish the soil and give you a good crop. So here I just got the harrow drag out here. We're just going to take the John Deere Gator, and we're going to run over the top of this thing several times. Just kind of picking up speed as we go and just burying the seed. The ground is getting a little more tense and firm from us driving on it. We're not sinking in it now as much after we first dug it up, because we've been on it now several times. And after I go over it with the drag, it actually is pretty smooth. You can pretty much just kind of rip across this thing, which is kind of nice. I think it's well worth it, folks. In our state, we have chronic wasting disease. We can't bait deer. We technically can't feed deer, but you can grow a food plot and let the deer eat from it. So for me, it's the best way to go. Depending upon the type of crop, it can last the deer all winter. And certainly there's some other animals that eat it too. In this particular situation, we'll probably have some good turkeys in here too. And I do think that's helpful as well. A drag, probably $300. Little spreader cart, maybe a couple $100. So really, your major investment is just in your pulling apparatus, which you can do with just all one tool if you wanted, like the tractor. You don't have to have anything more major than an ATV in some situations to get this stuff planted. But I do think it's real helpful in the spring to get this stuff in before the rains come in, and I think it really benefits them. So this is how we on the farm do our food plot. This particular one, like I said, is kind of set up for turkey and deer, and we're going with that archery kind of build to it. We're keeping it real close to the house, shooting right over the top of them, so to speak, right down at them. I think it'll be good. I'll let you know our success rate once fall hits. But thank you for watching, folks. Please like and subscribe and support the channel. We'll keep putting out great videos.